I discovered that my own daughter had hired professional actors to seduce my husband and stage fake affairs, complete with planted evidence and choreographed encounters, all to frame him for infidelity so she could force our divorce and inherit our $1 million home that I had promised would be hers someday. But apparently someday wasn't soon enough for her greed and impatience. The elaborate deception involved fake social media profiles, staged restaurant meetings, planted hotel receipts, and even actors pretending to be private investigators, all orchestrated by the person I trusted most in the world to destroy my marriage and steal my property. Before we dive into this unbelievable story of family betrayal and calculated manipulation, please hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from today. My name is Linda Patterson, and at 58 years old, I never imagined that my 32-year-old daughter Jessica would orchestrate the most elaborate and devastating betrayal I could ever conceive. I had been happily married to my second husband Robert for 12 years, and we lived in a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial home in suburban Atlanta that I had inherited from my late parents and had always planned to leave to Jessica when I passed away. Robert was 62 years old and had been the most loyal and devoted husband I could have asked for after my difficult first marriage ended in divorce when Jessica was just 8 years old. He had helped raise Jessica from childhood, paid for her college education, supported her through various career changes and financial struggles, and had always treated her like his own daughter despite having no legal obligation to do so. The house that would become the center of this incredible deception was worth approximately $1.2 million and sat on 3 acres of prime real estate in one of Atlanta's most desirable neighborhoods. My parents had bought the property in the 1970s for $30,000 and had left it to me as their only child when they passed away within 6 months of each other 5 years ago. Jessica had always shown an unusual interest in the house and its value, frequently asking questions about my estate planning and when she might expect to inherit the property. She made comments about how the house was too big for Robert and me, how we should consider downsizing, and how she could put the property to better use for her growing family. But what I didn't realize was that Jessica's interest in inheriting the house had transformed from patient expectation into desperate urgency over the past 2 years. She and her husband Michael were drowning in debt from poor financial decisions, including an expensive house they couldn't afford, luxury cars with enormous payments, and credit card debt from maintaining a lifestyle far beyond their actual income. Jessica had apparently convinced herself that if something happened to me or if I divorced Robert, she would immediately inherit the house and could sell it to solve all her financial problems. The fact that Robert and I were both healthy and happily married meant that her inheritance was potentially decades away, which didn't fit with her immediate need for money. The first signs that something was wrong in my marriage began about 8 months ago when Robert started receiving strange text messages and phone calls from women he claimed not to know. At first, these seemed like innocent wrong numbers or spam calls, but they gradually became more frequent and more personal in nature. "Linda, I keep getting these weird messages from women who seem to think they know me," Robert told me one evening, showing me his phone. "This one says she met me at a coffee shop downtown and wants to get together for lunch. I've never been to that coffee shop and I definitely don't know anyone named Amber." I examined the messages and found them oddly specific and detailed. The women referenced particular locations, dates, and conversations that seemed too elaborate to be random spam or mistaken identity. They included photos of attractive women and invitations to meet at specific restaurants and hotels around the city. Robert was as confused and concerned as I was about these mysterious messages. He showed me every text and call, and we even went to the phone company together to see if someone else might be using a similar number or if there was some technical explanation for the strange communications. But the messages continued and escalated over the following weeks. The women became more persistent and flirtatious, sending photos of themselves and making increasingly explicit suggestions about meeting for romantic encounters. They claimed to have Robert's personal information and insisted that he had given them his number after meeting them at various locations around Atlanta. What made these messages particularly disturbing was how much personal information the women seemed to have about Robert's schedule and activities. They referenced his work location, his favorite restaurants, and even specific days when he had been out running errands or meeting with clients. "Someone is obviously targeting you for some kind of scam," I told Robert. "Maybe they're trying to blackmail you or set you up for some kind of fraud. We should probably contact the police and see if this is part of some larger criminal scheme." But before we could take any official action, the situation escalated dramatically when one of these mysterious women actually approached Robert in person while he was having lunch at a restaurant near his office. According to Robert, an attractive blonde woman in her 30s sat down at his table uninvited and began talking to him as if they were old friends. "She knew my name, she knew where I worked, and she acted like we had been having some kind of ongoing relationship," Robert explained when he came home shaken and confused. "I told her she had the wrong person, but she insisted that we had met several times and that I had been leading her on. She caused such a scene that other people in the restaurant were staring at us." The woman had apparently become angry and accusatory when Robert insisted he didn't know her, claiming that he was lying and trying to avoid taking responsibility for their relationship. She had taken photos of Robert during their encounter and threatened to send them to his wife, not knowing that his wife was me and that I was already aware of the strange situation. This pattern continued over the next several months, with different women approaching Robert in various locations around the city. They appeared at his office building, at restaurants where he was eating lunch, at the gym where he worked out, and even at the grocery store where we regularly shopped. Each encounter followed a similar script where the woman would approach Robert with familiarity, claim they had an ongoing relationship, and become angry and threatening when he denied knowing them. They would take photos or videos of the encounters and make threats about contacting his wife or exposing his supposed infidelity. Robert was becoming increasingly stressed and paranoid about these encounters, afraid to go anywhere alone for fear that another woman would approach him and create a scene. He started asking me to accompany him on errands and activities that he had always done independently, which was completely unlike his normally confident and self-reliant personality. "I feel like I'm being stalked by multiple people," Robert confided. "I don't understand how they know so much about me or why they're targeting me specifically. I'm starting to wonder if someone is paying them to harass me as part of some elaborate revenge scheme." His suspicion about the coordinated nature of the harassment proved to be more accurate than either of us realized at the time. The women were indeed being paid to target Robert, but the person orchestrating the scheme was closer to home than we could have imagined. The breakthrough in understanding what was really happening came when I decided to hire a private investigator to look into the harassment campaign against Robert. I was convinced that someone with a grudge against him was organizing these encounters, and I wanted professional help in identifying who was behind the scheme. The private investigator I hired was a former police detective named Marcus Williams who specialized in stalking and harassment cases. After reviewing the evidence and observing the pattern of encounters, Marcus immediately suspected that this was not random harassment, but rather a coordinated campaign with a specific goal. "This looks like someone is trying to create evidence of infidelity," Marcus explained during our first meeting. "The encounters are too frequent, too well documented, and too coordinated to be coincidental. Someone wants to make it look like your husband is having multiple affairs, and they're creating a paper trail of evidence to support that narrative. Marcus suggested that we set up surveillance to catch one of these encounters on video and identify the people involved. He also recommended that we start documenting everything more carefully and look for patterns in the timing and locations of the encounters that might reveal who was coordinating them. The surveillance operation began the following week, with Marcus and his team monitoring Robert's typical locations and schedule. Within just 3 days, they observed and recorded one of the staged encounters, capturing not only the interaction between Robert and the actress but also her preparation before the encounter and her phone calls afterward. The video evidence was shocking and illuminating. It showed the woman sitting in her car outside Robert's office building for over an hour before he appeared, practicing her lines and checking notes on her phone. After the encounter, she immediately called someone and reported on how the interaction had gone, discussing payment and next steps for the ongoing campaign. Marcus was able to trace the woman's license plate and identify her as Amanda Foster, a struggling actress and part-time escort who had no legitimate connection to Robert whatsoever. When confronted with the evidence, Amanda initially refused to cooperate, but eventually agreed to provide information about who had hired her in exchange for not being prosecuted for harassment. The revelation that our own daughter Jessica was the mastermind behind the elaborate scheme was the most devastating shock of my entire life. Amanda explained that Jessica had contacted her through an online platform where actors advertised their services for various types of performances, including what she described as relationship pranks and infidelity tests. She told me she suspected her stepfather was cheating on her mother and wanted to test his loyalty, Amanda explained during her interview with Marcus. She said she would pay me $500 per encounter to approach him and see if he would respond to flirtation or agree to meet me somewhere private. But as Amanda continued working for Jessica, the requests became more elaborate and specific. Jessica wanted Amanda to create scenes in public, take photos and videos of the encounters, and gather personal information about Robert that could be used to make the interactions seem more believable and intimate. Jessica had also hired at least 3 other actresses to target Robert using similar scripts and approaches. She provided them with detailed information about his schedule, preferences, and habits that she had gathered during family dinners and casual conversations over the years. The most damning evidence came when Marcus discovered that Jessica had been documenting all of these staged encounters and building a file of evidence that she planned to use to convince me that Robert was having multiple affairs. She had photos, videos, text message screenshots, and even fake hotel receipts that she intended to present as proof of his infidelity. When confronted with this evidence, Jessica initially denied any involvement and claimed that Amanda was lying to avoid prosecution for harassment. But when presented with phone records, payment receipts, and video evidence of her coordinating the scheme, Jessica's denials crumbled and the truth about her motivations began to emerge. "I was trying to protect you, Mom," Jessica said through tears when forced to admit her involvement. "I suspected Robert was cheating and I wanted to prove it before you wasted more years on a man who wasn't faithful to you. I was trying to save you from being hurt and betrayed." But further investigation revealed that Jessica's real motivation had nothing to do with protecting me and everything to do with accelerating her inheritance of my house. She had been researching divorce laws and inheritance rights, and had learned that if Robert and I divorced, she would have a stronger claim to the house than if I died while still married to him. Jessica had also been struggling with severe financial problems that she had hidden from Robert and me. She and Michael were facing foreclosure on their home, repossession of their cars, and potential bankruptcy from accumulated debt. They needed immediate access to significant money, and Jessica saw my house as the solution to all their problems. The plan was for Jessica to present me with the fabricated evidence of Robert's infidelity, convince me to divorce him, and then persuade me to give her the house immediately rather than waiting for inheritance. She had researched legal ways to transfer property between family members and had even consulted with lawyers about the tax implications of such a transfer. She had it all figured out, Marcus explained. She was going to destroy your marriage, get the house transferred to her name, and then sell it to solve her financial problems. The whole thing was calculated to manipulate your emotions and make you act impulsively based on fake evidence. The discovery of Jessica's elaborate deception was emotionally devastating in ways I couldn't have imagined. The realization that my own daughter had been willing to destroy my marriage and happiness for financial gain shattered my trust and my understanding of who she really was as a person. Robert was equally devastated when he learned the truth about the harassment campaign that had been making his life miserable for months. The stress and paranoia he had experienced, the fear of going out in public, and the damage to his reputation from the staged encounters had all been orchestrated by someone he had considered his own daughter. I helped raise her from childhood, Robert said, his voice breaking with emotion. I paid for her education, supported her through difficult times, and always treated her like my own flesh and blood. How could she do something so cruel and calculating to someone who has only shown her love and support? The confrontation with Jessica about her betrayal was one of the most painful conversations of my life. When presented with undeniable evidence of her scheme, she initially tried to justify her actions by claiming financial desperation and concern for my well-being. But as the conversation continued, Jessica's true feelings and motivations became clear. She resented the fact that Robert and I were happy together when she was struggling financially. She felt entitled to immediate access to what she considered her inheritance rather than waiting for natural inheritance through death. "You're sitting on all this wealth while Michael and I are drowning in debt," Jessica said with startling coldness. "You could solve all our problems by giving me the house now instead of making us wait for you to die. Why should you and Robert get to enjoy a $1 million house when we can't even afford our mortgage payments?" Her words revealed a level of selfishness and entitlement that I had never recognized in my daughter. She genuinely believed that her financial problems gave her the right to manipulate and deceive her own family, and she showed no genuine remorse for the pain and stress her scheme had caused. The legal consequences of Jessica's actions were significant and complex. The harassment campaign against Robert involved multiple criminal charges, including stalking, conspiracy, fraud, and extortion. The actresses she had hired could also face charges, though most cooperated with authorities in exchange for reduced penalties. Jessica's financial situation became even more desperate when the legal fees and potential civil liability from her scheme added to her existing debt problems. The irony was that her attempt to solve her financial problems through deception had actually made them much worse and potentially ruined her relationship with the family members who might have helped her. The investigation also revealed that Jessica had been planning even more elaborate deceptions if the initial scheme had been successful. She had researched how to plant physical evidence of affairs, including fake hotel receipts, restaurant bills, and even staged photographs that would make the fabricated infidelity appear more convincing. Marcus discovered that Jessica had been working with a network of people who specialized in creating fake evidence for divorce cases. This included photographers who could stage compromising photos, computer experts who could create false digital records, and even people who would pose as witnesses to support fabricated stories of infidelity. This wasn't just a desperate scheme by someone in financial trouble, Marcus explained. This was part of a larger operation that helps people manufacture evidence for divorce proceedings. Your daughter had connected with professionals who do this kind of thing for a living. The emotional impact of Jessica's betrayal extended far beyond the immediate family. Robert's reputation in his professional and social circles had been damaged by the staged encounters, and he had to explain to colleagues and friends that he had been the victim of an elaborate frame-up orchestrated by his own stepdaughter. I also had to cope with the realization that I had raised someone capable of such calculated deception and manipulation. The guilt and self-doubt about my parenting and the family dynamics that had created this situation were overwhelming and required professional counseling to address. The relationship between Jessica and the rest of the family was permanently damaged by her actions. Robert could no longer trust or feel comfortable around someone who had orchestrated such an elaborate campaign to destroy his marriage and reputation. The financial consequences for Jessica were severe and long-lasting. In addition to legal fees and potential criminal penalties, she faced civil liability for the damages caused by her harassment campaign. Robert and I also immediately removed her from any inheritance considerations and updated our estate planning to ensure that she could never benefit from the property she had tried to steal through deception. The recovery process from this elaborate betrayal required extensive therapy and counseling for both Robert and me. We had to rebuild trust in our relationship after months of stress and suspicion caused by Jessica's scheme. We also had to process the trauma of being betrayed by someone we had loved and supported unconditionally. The investigation into Jessica's scheme also revealed the extent to which financial desperation can drive people to commit elaborate fraud and deception. Her debt problems and lifestyle pressures had created a situation where she was willing to destroy family relationships for the possibility of immediate financial relief. The case attracted attention from law enforcement agencies investigating similar schemes involving fake infidelity evidence and divorce fraud. Jessica's case became part of a larger investigation into networks of people who help manufacture evidence for divorce proceedings and inheritance disputes. The legal proceedings against Jessica and her accomplices took over a year to resolve, during which time Robert and I had to testify about the impact of the harassment campaign and provide evidence of the emotional and financial damages we had suffered. Jessica eventually pleaded guilty to multiple charges related to harassment, conspiracy, and fraud. She received a suspended sentence with probation and community service, along with requirements to pay restitution for the investigative costs and damages caused by her scheme. The aftermath of Jessica's betrayal fundamentally changed our family dynamics and relationships. The trust that had been destroyed could never be fully rebuilt, and family gatherings became strained and uncomfortable when Jessica was present. Robert and I made the difficult decision to maintain minimal contact with Jessica and to exclude her completely from any future inheritance or estate planning. The house that she had tried to steal through deception would now be donated to charity upon our deaths rather than passed down to family members. The experience taught us important lessons about family relationships, financial security, and the lengths to which desperate people will go to obtain money. It also highlighted the importance of professional investigation when facing harassment or suspicious behavior, even when it involves family members. Today, 3 years after discovering Jessica's elaborate deception, Robert and I have rebuilt our relationship and trust in each other. We've also implemented security measures to protect ourselves from future manipulation or fraud attempts by family members or others who might target our assets. The most important lesson from this experience is that family relationships don't automatically protect you from deception and betrayal when significant money is involved. Even people you've loved and supported unconditionally can become dangerous when they're desperate for financial relief and see you as an obstacle to obtaining money. We've also learned the importance of clear communication about estate planning and inheritance expectations. Jessica's scheme might have been prevented if we had been more explicit about our timeline and conditions for inheritance, rather than allowing her to develop unrealistic expectations about immediate access to our assets. The experience reinforced our commitment to living our lives on our own terms and not allowing financial pressure from family members to influence our decisions about property, money, or relationships. We now maintain strict boundaries about financial discussions and make it clear that manipulation or pressure tactics will result in immediate exclusion from any inheritance considerations. If you found this shocking story of family betrayal and elaborate deception compelling and want to hear more incredible true stories about inheritance fraud and family manipulation, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more amazing content. Share your thoughts about trust, family relationships, and financial fraud in the comments below. And let us know if you've ever experienced similar situations with family members you thought you could trust. For another unbelievable story about inheritance theft and family deception, check out the next video that should be appearing on your screen right now.